Good morning, everybody. Ori Spado here, the accidental gangster. I'm here again at Studio Place in Brentwood, California. Today I got a very, very special guest. He's somebody that we now become best of friends. He's a man that thinks like me with loyalty, honor, and respect. His name is Paulie Kazanofski. Paulie, good morning. How are you?
Very nice to be here, Ori. I really appreciate you having me in the studio. It's a great studio place.
It is.
Very nice. It's
you know
nice
what's
here.
the funny thing, Paulie, is we all met on Clubhouse.
That's right,
when
many
Clubhouse
years ago.
was really an app that you really had good people, and we all met there. And here we are and I call it the old clubhouse.
Yes.
Okay, where good people were, and good people recognize good people.
Yeah, as soon as I heard you and you came in, I think I was doing a real estate show or something. There was, I don't know, thousands of people back then.
Yeah,
thousands of people would come in.
Yeah.
And I knew right away you were from my neck of the woods. And I said, Ori, and I knew right away who you were. Obviously, being a back east guy, I grew up in Montreal, as you know. So, but I still knew a lot what was going on in New York because I lived in a kind of a very bad neighborhood in Montreal, and it was kind of, organized. Let's put it that way. It was organized.
I like to tell everybody out there, you might not, a lot of you probably know who Paulie Kazanofski is, but for those of you who do not know, Paulie he was born in Montreal, Canada, and he's got an astounding story of how he came from nothing to where he is, how he eventually, Paulie's going to tell you this story, how he came from Montreal to Las Vegas, and now he resides in Nashville, California, and how he has helped many people in the real estate business. He has trained hundreds and hundreds of people throughout the country in real estate to become successful. And in his own right, Paulie has flipped over 700 homes. And today he owns apartment buildings, property all over the place in Nashville, Kentucky. And he is a guy that knows his business. So folks, say hello to Paulie Kazanofski.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I mean, look, I wasn't born in Montreal. My mom and dad are immigrants, and they came from, my mom was Italian, my dad was Macedonian, from Macedonia, former Yugoslavia, where they had all the wars, Serbia, Croatia, and all that. A lot of people don't even know where Macedonia is, and I grew up with my mom and dad only until I was 4 years old. They got a divorce. My mom became a single mom. I didn't even know where my dad went. So we were obviously didn't have money, and I grew up in Montreal in a place called Pointe St. Charles. And Pointe St. Charles it's like a concentration camp without the barbed wire. A lot of people that are born there or reside there, they stay there. It's one of those neighborhoods. You have them in New York. A lot of people talk about New York. Montreal in that area was a lot like the New York time. It was ran by the Irish mob, actually. The docks were there. And I was a young kid growing up with a single mom. My mom didn't know English that well. And coming from Macedonia, we had to kind of integrate in what was going on there. And I was always a pretty good kid. I never did drugs. I didn't drink. I didn't get involved. Obviously, growing up there, I did some bad things I'm not proud of. I hung out with some bad kids growing up because that's what you know. But when I was 9 years old, I was getting picked on by some kids in the back alley from me. There was these three brothers, and my mom got fed up of me getting picked on, and actually, being Italian, hot-headed and all that, she threw down a broomstick and told me in Italian, pick up the broomstick and beat up those kids with the broomstick. Here I am, 9, I pick up the broomstick and I go up upstairs after it's, you know, I didn't hit the kids. I went and scared them, and I was scared to really hit them. Mentally, you know, you're not taught like beat up somebody with a stick. But, you know, growing up the way I did, and after that incident, my mom said, that's it, get your gym bag, get your shorts and your t-shirt. I'm bringing you to the local boxing gym around the corner from where we lived. And I found a passion. I found boxing, and there was a family, the Hilton family, and he had 5 sons, and they were all boxers, and they later became, 2 of them became world champion boxers. But I had good training. I found something that keeps me sort of disciplined. And I always say that discipline is the #1 thing in business too. But what I was learning in the gym, and my mom being a European mom that was an immigrant, she was very disciplined. Even though we didn't have money, we lived clean. We always looked nice because she didn't want people to think we were trash, you know? And she taught me a lot about loyalty and respect and honoring people. And, you know, if you see, you know, because obviously my mom knew what was going on in my neighborhood. She said, if you see something, you don't see something. And she'd say, if somebody went this way, you tell the people they went that way. You don't want to get involved in anything like that. So I got into sports. I was a really good athlete. You know, I know you can't tell anymore. Yeah. I like to eat, you know. But I was a very good athlete. I became a really good, highly decorated amateur fighter. And the only reason why is because I had a strong disciplinarian mom that would, you know, take out the strap if she needed it, you know.
You know, Paulie, you know, you and I become very close.
Yes.
Because those are words that we believe in, we lived our life in, and we were taught those at a young age.
Very young.
You know, and you are 25 years younger than me.
Yeah.
You're a different generation.
Now.
You're 55.
Yeah.
I'm going to be 79 next month. But there's one thing that's missing in this world today, and you know, you listen to a lot of my talks and things on social media, and I don't know why parents are not teaching that, because we live in a country today that we're divided. All right, people hate, and that it's got to stop.
Yeah, you're right.
If you can you make some suggestions to the mothers and fathers out there?
It's like my mom. My mom taught me this, and so I teach it to my kids. You know, I talk about it a lot. My mom used to tell me stories of the old country when she was a kid, and she would tell me how her parents would discipline her, like really strong, like strong-arm discipline, you know, like the old days, right? And so I'm not saying that's what is needed for kids, but at least to tell them. My mom used to tell me, you know, stay away from the drugs, stay away from the alcohol. She used to preach to me all the time. She said, you could be something. And, you know, I was dyslexic, and we didn't know what that was when I was a kid. And, you know, I had trouble reading and writing, and no one diagnosed it until later on when I got older. I kept thinking, man, I must be dumb. I must be dumb. I don't get it like the other kids. But my mom and people in my neighborhood saw something special in me. I just didn't see it. I had a great personality. You know, I was a tough kid, obviously, as I grew. And I mentioned earlier, I did some things I'm not proud of. You know, I used to collect some money. We ran numbers. You know, I did things like that. But my mom is one, because her voice was here. I had a conscience. And you had mentioned something about being, you know, talking about loyalty and staying away from the bad things. My mom's voice was in my head. And I think that's what is missing, because the parents, I believe, their voice is not in their kids' head to teach them these good things about loyalty. You know, I was very loyal to my friends, people in the neighborhood, and a lot of the people in my neighborhood, they really liked me, they respected me for 2 reasons. Number one, they knew my mom. They knew that she raised me good in that neighborhood. And number 2, I was a very highly decorated athlete, boxer. And you know, I did all sports, but boxing was my number one.
Yeah.
And you know, I got very good at it, and that's how I ended up coming to America. You know. And
yeah, we'd like to hear that.
Yeah.
What made you? And Las Vegas was the first place you went to, right?
It was actually Los Angeles, where we are right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and quite funny. The story is that I didn't know I was going to get out of Point St. Charles, where I grew up. But I was good at two things: playing music and doing boxing. I thought those two things were going to be my success road, path to success, so to speak, right? But when I came out here to California, I met an uncle from my father's side, and he was in real estate. And I didn't know anything. Like, you have to understand, I didn't know people were rich. I grew up in a poor neighborhood. I thought everybody lived like us, right? And then I met my uncle, who was just a regular good person, and my aunt, who obviously was my dad's sister. And I met him, and I saw these two immigrant people that acclimated into California, and they owned, you know, 400 plus properties. And my uncle would buy them, stabilize them, he'd fix them up, clean them up, and rent them and hang on to them for years and years, almost his whole life. Now, some of it, looking back now, I was young, I didn't understand the game. But my uncle saw what people in my neighborhood saw about me too. My uncle would say, you have a special gift. You know how to treat people, you have excitement, you have discipline, you get up early, you do all the things that are right. You're very loyal, you're charismatic with people, you're not like a pushy guy, but you never quit. And so I kept hearing that from my uncle, because I worked with him periodically. I learned a little bit of the real estate game with him, a little bit. I was asking him questions because I was inquisitive to know how he got to where he is. Because don't forget, when you're a kid growing up, kind of the way you and I always thought you have to be an actor or a musician or an athlete to make money. I just met a regular person that happened to be a part of my family through my father's side, and I saw that I could live a good life in business, and he showed me the way. He really did. He showed me the way. And they were my aunt and uncle and their kids were a good, quiet family. There was no yelling. There was, you know, honor, discipline in there. You know, where I grew up, I saw drugs, alcohol, you know, just bad things that most kids shouldn't see. And so I gravitated to learning. And I've always been like that, even with the boxing or any sport I did, or even some things at school that I found interesting, or playing drums. I'm a drummer too. If I liked something, I really focused and I disciplined myself. I practiced harder than anyone did. And when I learned the real estate game, I wanted to get so good. So I started talking to people in the real estate game. I started building relationships. I started talking to anybody that had anything to do with real estate. And I started learning, and then I got even coaching. I actually paid for coaching, and that helped me learn the right way to buy houses and apartment buildings, how to fix them up. I became a licensed contractor. I became a realtor myself, and I really focused, and I dove in with 2 feet. And I think that's what's missing. People don't know their craft anymore, especially with social media. Everybody's a liar on social media, how they made millions and millions, and I made 10 million. It's a long road to success. And the greatest thing is when I met my uncle, he taught me that. He said, this is not overnight. Real estate is a get-rich-slow scheme, not a get-rich-quick. It's going to take years of understanding your craft, doing it right, learning everything, even to put up a fence, something stupid, to dig holes, right? People think they're above working in their house. Now you hear a lot of these gurus and all these people, don't work on your houses. I believe when you first start, you should learn the craft of how to do it, what it should cost, how to get the right people. right?
Absolutely, I agreed with that there.
Yeah, the right people. And if you, how are you going to know you have the right people if you don't know anything about your craft? And I don't care what business you're in, if you know your craft and you engulf yourself in learning and being around mentors that can show you the way to become successful. And I didn't just learn about real estate, I learned about more about life. What to do with my money, how to build wealth. Nobody teaches us in our neighborhoods that we grew up in about money.
No, and they don't teach that in school either.
They don't teach it in school.
But you know, the thing is, and your uncle taught that to you.
Yeah.
You learn everything. So that way, by you having done everything, it's like I always believed in, all right? I would never have somebody that worked for me or was under me or part of my crew do something that I never did.
Right, of course.
I
Lead
mean,
by example.
So
Right.
you got to lead by example, and that's exactly, your uncle gave you great advice there.
You know, the one
And
thing
so-
I got to say about my uncle, I never met someone who talked bad about him. And I wanted to be like that too, as a businessman. Not just the, you know, when I first started and I started building a team around me, and obviously, you know, you need people around you. You can't grow a business without the right people, but I knew who to pick. I look for loyalty, I look for respect, I look for principle-driven people, hard workers, people that didn't think they were going to be successful overnight. I knew I had to pick people that were willing to work for it. And I think that's how I built my business. And I think, you know, the internet has poisoned a lot of the younger people, that now that if someone says, well, you know, I worked 10 years and I'm worth maybe 5 million, it doesn't sound like a lot, but anybody could just say whatever they want on the internet nowadays.
That's right, that's true.
And I'm very honest and ethical in the way that I speak to my students, speak to the people that work for me. I'm very thorough and honest with them. I tell them the truth. I tell them what could go wrong, not all the things that just go right. So everybody always talks about, like, if you go to a casino and you gamble, which I don't, but most people that gamble, they talk about their wins, but they never talk about how much they lost.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah, so that's how I approach business.
But you were also, you know, you trained a lot of people.
A lot.
And you do basically now, you change because of the economy. And, you know, we're in a tough economy. Interest rates are high today. And what changes have you made to work?
That's a great question.
Keep going in this economy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, real estate is constantly moving. There's up markets, there's down markets. Right now we're in a down market, which you said. Why? There's a lot of reasons why. Problem is we just came from an up market during COVID. There was no inventory. And of course, when there's no inventory, the supply and demand, the price of houses went so high. So now people's memory, it wasn't even that long ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago, people were getting top dollar for their house. But the interest rate was 3%. There was no supply, so of course the prices are going to go up. What's changed now is there's more inventory coming in, even though there's still an inventory issue. But here's the worst thing. In history, we've never seen the interest rate pop from 2.8 to 3% all the way up to 8.3% where we sit right now. And when that happens as quickly as it did, historically it's never happened. When that happens, you have to adjust. And if you just learn by someone that's selling a program, or some of these gurus that say they did 1,000 deals, but you and I both know it's BS, right? You know, my deals I've done are documented. I could show people their tax. You could look in tax records and see that I've done the deals. And when you've done the deals, you learn things. There's clues. Success leaves clues. And when the interest rate is high, like it is right now, it's all in the way you buy. Real estate's always the way you buy. And a lot of people are like, well, why buy right now? Because the interest rate's high. You can't, when you're in real estate, you can't stop buying. So what you can do is start pivoting. And so what I started doing is really honing in on my numbers, what things cost to fix, the renovation costs, whether it's a big building, office building, a multi-family building, or even just a small single house. You have to buy the property right. And you have to get it for around 65 to 70% loan to value minus the renovation costs. And then you now have to be the best house or the best building for the most inexpensive price, and it has to look better than everything else. And when you adjust those numbers and do it that way, you're still going to be on the market for a lot longer, but you have to weather the storm by doing these principles: buying it right, fixing it right, knowing those numbers, and pricing it right. People are still stuck in the old, the last 2 years, 3 years, what happened in COVID. It's not like that right now, but it takes time for people to adjust. So when you have the right wherewithal and the right knowledge, you can adjust quickly. I pivot very, very quick. And what I've been doing right now is I've been holding a lot of my properties. And people say, well, why are you still buying? It's at 8.3. It's very simple. If it does go down, which we hope and pray, but no one ever really has the crystal ball.
Up will go down.
Usually. Yeah. But if you buy right and you hang on to it, you have to make sure it cash flows. So if you have the knowledge on how to fix something and you get a good deal, it will still cash flow. Like a building, you know, I just bought a 48-unit building not too long ago. I bought it great because I worked on the price and I got them down over $1 million on the building. Literally, I imagine talking someone down and it was already a good deal where it cash flowed at the price they were asking. Not much, but I talked them down. I understood the area rent, and the rents are going up. I knew the rents are going up, and I knew that the previous owner didn't manage it correctly and didn't fix things. And when you don't fix things and manage things correctly, and you don't raise the rents where they need to be because you didn't do those maintenance issues, that's when you get the good deal. And here's the greatest thing. If the interest rate adjusts downwards, you could always refinance. You got to keep your credit clean, your financials clean. You know, that's one thing that I hear a lot on the internet. Oh, you don't need credit and all that. There's truth to that. You really don't need a lot of great credit to do single family flips or wholesaling and all of this. But if you want to grow wealth, you need to keep your principles high. You need to have your credit spectacular, your financials, your paperwork, your taxes, and all of that. Yes, the bank looks at the building, but the bank always looks at the person borrowing the money. Absolutely. And I teach that to my students all the time.
That's a very important factor for people to understand. But, you know, you still need the credit. You gotta have decent credit in order, if you're starting out and you got a few dollars for a down payment, you got to have credit for the bank to loan you that money.
Yeah, you know? I agree. And, you know, look, can you do real estate without credit? Yes, I don't want to discourage anybody that sees this.
How would they do it without
Well, they
credit?
could use other people's money.
Yeah.
You know, you could use third-party money like a hard money lender. If you're a good person, sometimes good people, bad things happen to them. They might hurt their credit, they can't make a payment, they lose their house, they lose their job, they get sick. Things happen like that. That's how I end up getting a lot of my properties, is when people go through hard times. That's when someone like me will go in there and try to help them as much as possible. And don't get me wrong, I'm not Mother Teresa, I'm going in to make money. You know, and I never sugarcoat. When I talk, I never sugarcoat. I'm not Mother Teresa. I do this to make money, but also I look at the people that are losing their house or losing their building, and I try to do the best I can to help them for their fresh start, buy the property, fix it, and then either rent it or flip it. And people say, well, why would you still flip houses? To me, they ask me that all the time. You've done so many flips. Aren't you tired of doing flips? the reason why I do a lot of flips is because it allows me to build my nest egg so that I can go to the bank and borrow leverage bank money when I buy like that 48 unit. I've owned 372 apartment building, 372 units, all the way down to a 25 unit apartment building that I still have to this day that makes me around $12,000 a month positive cash flow every month net. And so there's three ways when I look at real estate, and I think anybody listening to this should, is when you buy something, you're making cash flow from the rents, then you're paying down your principal, so you're building that the equity in the building, and you're improving it. I'm constantly improving it, and I don't always take the cash flow and put it in my pocket. I will put it back into the actual building to make it better so that I can adjust the rents up. And those are the secrets that, and obviously there's a lot more, and it's a short time we talk, but I learned all this stuff by doing it, by having mentors, my uncle being the first one, and then having the right coaches, and they've helped me analyze not just the real estate part of my life, but the wealth building machine. Because my mom, I watched her work her whole life, never had money. People that I loved in my neighborhood, I watched them work, still know a lot of the friends that I have in my old neighborhood, and they didn't learn how to create the wealth. And to me, I think that's more important than just always looking to work and make the big score, but not do the right thing with the money.
You know, those are create the wealth.
Create it.
People don't understand that. People are always out looking, making this, if I could do this, if I could do that. They're always thinking in the negativity and not the positive.
Yeah.
And creating that wealth is it's a learning experience.
It is. And I've made a lot of mistakes.
But you learned that there. You were very fortunate, regardless of where you come from, that area in Montreal. The people that you met have been influencing in your life. And now here you are, and you're still a very young man.
Thank you.
That you can teach people
all
to
the
do
time.
things. Because, you know, you and I known each other, I don't know how many years now. But even on my social media, people write me and ask me, how's Paulie? I have never heard one single person say anything bad about you.
I appreciate it.
And that is really, for somebody to do that, and folks, I know Paulie. Paulie, I call him, he answers his phone. Communications. People don't do that. You and I discussed this yesterday.
Yeah.
People
it's
don't
a respect.
communicate.
It's a respecting. To me, I look at you, Ori, like an uncle. Like you're like my Uncle Jimmy.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about life from you, and you know, I think a lot of the younger generation needs to look up to older folks and really, you know, embrace what they went through, even if it's some things that were wrong. You can learn from anyone that is willing to show their heart and soul to you. And I think a lot of the younger generation is missing that, you know. And to me, you know, I had one of my best friends was 78 years old. His name was Carmine Calabro, and I was like 35 at the time, and I would hang out with him. He owned a printing shop, and he would teach me about business and how money works and the stock market and all this stuff. And I would just sit there, and he loved to bowl. Carmine. So you remind me of my friend Carmine, and you know, I consider you one of my closest, dearest friends, like a best friend. And you know, it's because I don't care what level anybody's at. I don't ever look at people for what they make. I look at people for who they are. And I think that's why when I look at my students, let's say, they might just be starting out and never did a house or a building before, but I look at them as maybe not equal in real estate, but they're equal to me as a human. And so that's why I think I'm pretty successful as a coach, because I don't walk around like my head's too big. And you got to remember, I grew up where I grew up. I started humble, I stayed humble, and I'll die humble. And I tell my students, I'm like, when you get your big score and you make hundreds of thousands or $1 million, I've had 7-figure paycheck closing days, and I didn't go, my days didn't change. Nothing changed, Dory. I didn't go celebrate and spend a bunch of money, buy all these fancy cars and stuff like that. I reinvested my money. That's what I call discipline, and understanding how money works, to where I can buy assets that spit out money like an ATM and live off of that money. And that takes sometimes a decade to create, or even more, even longer than a decade. And it's having that discipline. It's not like, I heard, you remember when on Clubhouse, when we all met, people were talking about NFTs, and I used to say, I just don't believe in them. I don't believe in all the Bitcoin. I'm sure people have made millions doing all of this stuff. I always stay disciplined. I stay to what I know, the craft that what I know. And people say, well, Paulie, you don't believe in leverage. You don't believe in borrowing money. No, I do believe in leverage, but there's the right leverage. I don't get in debt. I don't use my credit card for buying stupid things. I get in debt buying assets that make me money, that I could pay off the debt with the rental portions of what I get for rents and pay off my buildings. And then you could even cash out later on, 10, 12 years from now, you cash out on a building or even a house tax-free, because you do a cash out refinance. And I know I'm jumping in deep there, but there's so many ways to be able to legally have write-offs in the real estate game. And I think once you understand that, you can do very well. But it's not easy. And I tell people this is not an easy business. Just like what you did. Was it easy?
No, it was not easy. Nothing is easy.
Yeah.
And people need to understand that. As you know, Paulie, I've been big on social media.
Yes.
And Clubhouse. We all heard the same people. I promise I'll make you a millionaire.
It's all bullshit.
Sign up for my program here, okay? I'm a billionaire, okay? I got this jet, I got this yacht, okay? And they're self-proclaimed. You are a man, the salt of the earth you are.
Thank you, sir.
I think you should do something, and if you want to, I'm going to ask you here. Help train these people, all right, of how to do things and do them the right way and still be a good person.
Yeah, you don't have to lie to people. And by the way, I do not ever talk bad about anybody. I don't care, like you'd mentioned some of these guys. Hey, all the power to them, whatever they want to say they did, whatever, I don't know. Maybe some of them are really, truly successful. We don't know. It's so easy to act and pretend you're successful. You don't have to have a lot of money to tell somebody you're worth tens of millions of dollars.
Right.
If you have $1 million and you don't know any better, and you can't see their asset book or their cash flow or what they've done, it's easy to spin the truth, right?
It's very easy, you know, and you never brag about how much money you got or don't have, but when people start bragging how much money they got, my ears shut off. But you know what my mom used to say, and I think you'll appreciate this because you come from the world you come from. My mom used to say, fly under the radar, son. Do not get all, arrogant and talk a big game. Stay humble. Be humble, be respectful, be loyal, be character person. Because at the end of the day, if you look at my social media,
I don't buy my likes. I don't buy anything. I am who I am. I'm totally transparent. I'm always trying to help people on my social media. I don't even like social media. Believe it or not, I haven't even posted anything for so long because to me, I did the social media thing because it was more for like the branding and the marketing to bring more deals to me. Believe it or not, to attract more deals to me. But now that I've been in the business so long, I have so many deals brought to me that I say yes or no to on a daily basis because I've been in the business so long, and I always close. If I say I'm going to buy this property, whether it's a vacant piece of land, a single family, an office building, a mixed use building, whatever it is, multifamily, if I say to somebody, I'm going to close, I always close because I know my numbers. And when you have that reputation, people will bring you deals because they know, hey, at least Paulie, he'll close. He might not be the highest bid, but he'll close.
The magic number is know your numbers.
Know your numbers. Got to know it.
Well, Paulie, I think we should start a program, a training program to teach people. You are the master at this here.
Thank you,
You
sir.
are humble. You think like me. You know, folks, you all know that I'm a reformed gangster. But you never hear me talking about bad people, people who informed on me. Okay, I got no blame. I got no animosity toward anybody. And you know, folks, you got to live your life like that. Life is a short. We're here on this earth for a very short period of time. So make every day of your time count. Paulie, you have anything to close?
Well, in closing, I just want to thank you. First of all, I remember when I first met you and I went and I found you on social media, and it's something that you just said there, and I knew you were honorable right away. Not even now, I know 100% who you are. What you say you are, and I know that for 1,000%. And when you talk about loyalty and respect and character, you engulf those things. But when I first met you and I saw some of your podcasts that you did and things like that, I noticed one thing about you: you never talk bad about anybody in the old days. And I knew you were old school. And obviously we grown to know each other, and I knew the more I got to know you, you reminded me of my Uncle Jimmy. You reminded me of Carmine Calabro, my 78-year-old friend. And now I have the pleasure to say that you are one of my closest, dearest friends. I look
Paulie,
to you like an uncle to me.
Those words mean so much.
Yeah, it's
and
the
folks,
truth.
You know, tell the truth.
Yeah.
Because if you lie, it's going to come up.
That's what I noticed about you in those podcasts. You always told the truth. And you were who you were. And that's who I am in business. That's who I was as a boxer, a fighter. I didn't talk a big game before I fought a guy. Like you see all this stuff in boxing now. I never talked bad about my opponent. I didn't say I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna beat you, I'm gonna school you, I'm gonna do this stuff. I said, we're gonna find out when we fight who's the tougher guy. Who did the better training, the better discipline, the better knowledge, learning their craft. And that's why when it comes to real estate, I'm not in a competition with anyone. I wish everybody the best. I hope they make millions, deca millions, hundreds of millions, even $1 billion. But for me, I stay in my lane and I do what I know is right. I don't have to make hundreds of millions and rip people off. I rather have what I have, but I did it the right way. And I think that's because I came from where I came from, and I don't forget where I come from.
Well, Paulie, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you here.
Likewise.
Today. And folks, I want to thank you all for watching Stories with Ori. As you all know by now, you all know who I am. Okay? You all ask me all the time, you want to do these gangster talks. Folks, I'm not going to have gangsters on my show. I got real people that could help benefit your life, make you feel more positive, more secure in what you're doing, and give you credibility. These are the things that I'm trying to bring. So please subscribe to my YouTube and watch these programs. Thank you, folks. Thank you very much. Paulie, thank you.
Thank you for having me.